Hello.
Yeah, let's get started.
We didn't really talk about how we're going to start this one.
I don't even know what we're talking about, to be honest.
We're talking about changing bodies. Did you ever watch Student Bodies growing up?
You know I did.
Did you?
Yeah, we talked about it. And that's how I know the Student Bodies reference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, since we talked about talking about doing this episode, that's all that comes to mind for me is like the Student Bodies, like the intro song, which I can still recite some of it by heart. It's just like permanently etched into my brain. Although I was looking it up a couple weeks ago when we first started talking about it. Do you know it was only on for 3 seasons?
I mean,
if I felt like
when you're 8 years old.
Yeah, exactly. When you're 8-9 years old, time is like so skewed from reality. Like I thought I watched it for like all of my childhood, which maybe I did just with like repeat episodes and replays and stuff. But it was actually only on 97, 98, and 99. Mm-hmm. There were only 3 seasons.
Well, it's the same with Hang Time.
Yeah, I was never like super into Hang Time.
I don't know if anyone was super into it, but I think you could like watch it and it was like maybe a top 50 show as opposed to like a top 5 show for you. It really just depends on how much you're trying to procrastinate from doing any homework or trying to fill your hours as a kid with more TV.
So many hours of TV. I mean, Student Bodies was like in the Saturday. I had my weekday lineup and then I had my weekend lineup. Student Bodies was part of the Saturday night lineup. You had Goosebumps in there. I think Are You Afraid of the Dark was in there maybe too, but then it was like Student Bodies and Breaker High back to back.
Saturday night or Friday night?
I think it was Saturday night. It could have been Friday. I mean, I think it was just streaming all the time. Uh-huh. But yeah, classic shows. Anyways, this isn't an episode about 90s TV, but it is about changing bodies.
It's about changing bodies, and that's where you get Student Bodies from, and then that's where you get the
Ryan Gosling and Breaker High.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. So we're talking about puberty?
I mean, we could talk about puberty. Well, changing, I think where this episode was sort of born out of was a couple places. First of all, because this is our first page of the new year. Happy 2024. And generally people, I mean, not that I personally don't encourage waiting for a new year to set intentions or resolutions or make goals. I think you can, you know, if you think of something on Tuesday, you should start implementing it on Wednesday type of thing. But there's no doubt that a new year just kind of is a nice time to set a new goal. You know, like the holidays are over, you've probably overspent and overate and overindulged in a lot of things just from like December celebrating end of season. So January always feels kind of like a quieter, more reflective time to put new goals into action. And I think it's probably true for a lot of people that people do set intentions or goals around their bodies. Come January, whether that's implementing a new workout routine or implementing a new diet. And yeah, it shouldn't be all about a body aesthetic or image, but I think it probably is true for a lot of people that with those good intentions of starting a new exercise routine or a new diet or whatever that change is, it probably does stem a little bit from wanting to change your physical body for aesthetic reasons in some way. So that's part of where this episode was born out of.
And the other part?
The other part is my body's changing because there's a tiny human in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Surprise, internet.
A tiny human baby?
I hope so. I don't know.
A 5 month, a little over 5 month baby that's growing.
A 22-week baby that's in there and completely hijacked control of the system.
Yeah, it's running the show.
So that was another, sort of reason why we wanted to talk about changing bodies. But with those things, whether it's, we can get into that a little bit more in a minute, but whether it's a New Year's intention, whether it is being pregnant and just having a tiny, 1 pound alien in there taking control, or whether it's something like recovering from an injury. Like there's so many reasons why your body physically might change. And then I think when we're talking about an instruction manual of like things that would be good to know, and never mind any acute changes like that, but just age related changes, right? Like your body will naturally change as you age. So how do you mentally deal with that and change gracefully instead of resisting it the whole way down?
The right amount of resistance, I think, for the right reasons. Meaning like, oh, I'm getting older, so I'm not going to do anything as far as like, I'm not going to moisturize my hands, or I'm not going to take care of my body. And then making sure that, you're doing it for at least a couple reasons, not just all based on your appearance of
your aesthetic.
You want people to like you because of your appearance, or you want to feel significant because of your appearance. Those are all things that we all have, but to try to get at least one or two other things that your body can provide you, or that you're how you feel about yourself is not totally tied into your appearance only.
Well, and we've sort of talked about this in I think a variety of different pages as well, but wanting to physically look good isn't a bad thing. Like a little bit of vanity isn't a bad thing. I don't think you have to feel shame or like negative feelings about that, even if that is a motivator for the new year of like, you know what, I want to lose 10 pounds. I want to fit into this dress for this event later this year. I want to look good for my partner. Like there's no, much like spite can sometimes be a good motivator for certain things, which I would say sort of falls into maybe like a negative spectrum of emotions. Like spite can be a great motivator to want to improve something. A little bit of vanity, I think, can also be a great motivator to want to improve your physical aesthetic or your physical body. But hopefully it's not the only thing, because Father Time will play a role eventually,
Well, not even Father Time, but what about the stork?
Yeah.
The stork that drops babies off.
Yeah.
So good luck. You can fight against Father Time, but as far as fighting against the baby in your belly, you're totally fucked.
Yeah.
That's what leads us here today, and more so leads you here today. I got my own battle with prolactin.
Do you want to, before we get into the stork, do you want to talk a little bit about how you've been fighting prolactin, or what prolactin is?
I am in a knife fight with prolactin, which I only know about like in the last month or 6 weeks. But that is it a hormone? I guess it's
prolactin's
a hormone.
Yeah. It's present in both men and women, but specifically for men.
Yeah, and men, this is me learning it from Huberman. So maybe I don't have it fully learned quite yet, but it does two things. There's the thing that it always does is when you have, after you're done having sex, it prevents you from wanting to have sex again for a period of time. Okay? Because
a short period of time.
Yeah, because they've done studies where like they inhibit prolactin, and guys like in their brain chemistry, they still want to like look for other sexual partners and stuff. So prolactin does that, which it always does, I guess. But when you have, then it has more of the psychological effect where when your partner is pregnant, when you're expecting a baby, prolactin is going to start storing more fat in the male to prepare for sleepless nights and like more energy usage and less time for themselves kind of thing. So that's that evolutionary part of it, where it's like, okay, yeah, if this was 1,000 years ago or a few thousand years ago or 500,000 years ago or 2 million years ago when it started, apparently, prolactin would come in handy because, hey, I have a baby that I'm barely trying to keep myself alive. Now I have a baby. I'm not going to be able to go out and hunt and gather food as much, so I'm going to need more fat storage, more long-term fat usage. So that's what happens, apparently, with the a little bit of the dad bod or the expectant dad bod. And I don't know, I haven't really done studies on any of my male friends when they're expecting and see if they go to shit or not. But now that I think about it,
you don't need to call out anyone specifically on the internet.
No.
But yeah, there is perhaps scientific reasons, evolutionary reasons for the dad bod, y'all.
So for me, I haven't really noticed any. The only change in myself is, like I can pop on 5 pounds suddenly, and maybe that's because it was just December type of thing. But even in the past, like when it was December, I would be able to always stay at like 170, 171. But now I can get to 175, 176 quite easily, even if I'm working out a bunch. So yeah, maybe I noticed a little bit in myself, but we're not talking about me battling prolactin and 4
pounds of prolactin.
That's not exactly my body going through changes that I need to fight against. It's more so about what you're experiencing right now, which is pregnancy, which is your first, your first time about to have a baby, and getting into 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, and the actual uncontrollable changes where your body is now being used as machinery to make something else, not just to operate for you.
Right. Yeah, well, I mean, I got a whole lot of things to say about that, but I was thinking maybe just to start, just for the sake of some nerdy science shit, I would get into, for any women that don't know, or men, not just necessarily women, but just going through like a few of the changes of what women do experience during pregnancy. Because I think it's easy to think about like, oh, I'm going to get bigger, I'm less mobile, like I get more short of breath. You feel those things, but maybe you don't know why. So before I get into me personally, I was thinking maybe I would share some of that science stuff. So, I mean, literally all of your body organs and systems change. But in terms of cardiovascular changes, so expectant mothers will go through increased O2 consumption. So how much oxygen you have to take in to use will actually go up by 15 to 20% just in the first trimester alone. So usually by the 10th week of pregnancy. You have increased cardiac output just because you are having to pump more blood volume. Again, you have this tiny fetus, you're growing a placenta, like all of those things require more blood to be shunted to that area. In terms of your ventilation, you have increased alveolar ventilation. So this is actually caused by a hormonal change by progesterone. I think it's easy to think about your belly's expanding. So naturally that would push up on your rib cage and make it feel like you have to breathe faster, perhaps. Like that, intuitively, that's kind of what I think. But it's actually caused by progesterone, and your respiratory rate doesn't necessarily go up, but it's more the tidal volume. So that progesterone will cause your alveoli to be able to like expand more, I guess, or ventilate more. But it also causes changes in your rib cage, so your ribs will loosen more to allow for that belly expansion upwards, and they can loosen to have up to 10 centimeters more expansion by the end of I guess by the time you deliver.
Yeah, like a circumference measurement.
So that's kind of interesting. Because of those progesterone changes too, you also get just more edema in your respiratory tract, or more secretions. Edema is like swelling caused by fluid. I guess is like the best way to explain it in lay terms. But yes, you can get just more mucus production. So sometimes people will like cough more with more secretions, or like have to blow your nose more, even though you don't necessarily have a cold. So those secretions just come from changes in your hormones. And then in terms of your blood volume, which we touched on a little bit with cardiac output, so you'll have increase in your plasma volume by 50%. So when you break down like components of blood, plasma is a component of your blood, so that will increase by 50%. Your red blood cell count, though, will increase as well, but only by 20 to 30%. So because that plasma volume can actually draw out some fluids, that's what causes edema in like your hands and your feet. So, a lot of women I know will complain later in pregnancy of like, oh, my feet are so swollen, I have cankles, like my lower legs are bigger. That's all that plasma volume being shifted to like your extremities and drawing in more fluid. But it will actually cause, one of the things that causes anemia, like a lot of women suffer from low red blood cell count and anemia just at baseline to begin with, but you're particularly at risk during pregnancy because because your plasma volume increases by 50%, but your red blood cell count only increases by 20 to 30%. It causes this relative like hemodilution, where now just everything relative to each other, you have way more plasma than you do red blood cells. So this is why it's recommended for a lot of women to take iron supplements, or if you're taking prenatal vitamins, iron is a part of that, just to kind of combat this like relative anemia. And then of course you get into all the lovely GI symptoms of like you gotta pee more all the time. Because of that increased blood volume, you're having more blood flow to your urinary tract and your kidneys. Some of that's from pressure, I would imagine, too, of just your belly expanding and more pressure being put on your kidneys or your bladder, perhaps, as well.
But you were having to pee more even like pretty early on, right?
Oh yeah, like I would never.
That wasn't necessarily from pressure at the start.
No, but more blood volume, blood volume expanding, right? I suppose earlier on it's just for more blood volume, and I'm not 100% sure, but later I would suspect maybe it's just from pressure on your bladder and stuff as well. And then. Yeah, so I definitely had that. Like, I would never wake up in the middle of the night to pee, like, ever. And almost immediately, like, in first trimester, I was having to get up to pee at, like, 2 to 2:30, like, every morning, which is super annoying when you're not sleeping well anyways. And then you have this interrupted sleep to go to the washroom. And luckily, I have not had this symptom because this is literally a nightmare for me. But so many women also complain of constipation. And that's just from decreased motility and also from your uterus putting pressure on your colon can cause constipation in a lot of women. So those are some of the lovely maternal changes that people will experience during pregnancy. But for me, I guess more what I wanted to talk about in this episode, and just in general, pregnancy related or not, but whether it's, age related or dealing with an injury, but how to like mentally cope with those changes. Because I'm a person that takes a lot of pride in my exercise routine and in my strength as a female and like my physical abilities. And so literally being forced to slow down has been kind of a mental challenge for me, I think, some days. Yeah, like first trimester specifically, just the fatigue is real. So I'm very much a person like that's structured when I come home from day shifts of like, okay, you know, I get up at 4:30 in the morning, you know, I have my little morning routine, I make my breakfast, I make my coffee, I go to work, I work for 12 hours, hopefully just 12 hours. Sometimes you get off late, and then my commute is going to be so long getting home. And then when I come home, I like change into my workout gear immediately and I work out as soon as I get home, because I know if I want to sit on the couch, that the likelihood of that happening just goes down like exponentially. But there's sometimes, or there were sometimes, many times after a long day where just because of hormonal changes, fatigue, like carrying around more weight, increased blood volume, all those maternal changes we just talked about, I would come home and I would just be like, I physically don't even feel like I can go for a walk tonight. Like I have to sit down. And I'm used to battling those things on tired days after long shifts, where it's just like you got to conquer your inner bitch and you got to like put on the workout gear, and you, even if it's 20 minutes, like you can do it. So it was sort of a mental battle of realizing like, okay, you actually don't need to conquer your inner bitch. There is no inner bitch. Your body is physically asking you to rest, and you need to like honor that for the sake of something else instead of physically pushing through because mentally you want to.
Yeah.
So that was humbling.
I think that's just parent training.
Oh, and it is, right?
When you get outside of yourself.
Yeah.
You know, when you're not pregnant, and most of the time you're like, yeah, my brain's trying to negotiate with me, and I don't negotiate
with terrorists.
With mental terrorists, right? So, because more often than not, if you do that most of the time, where you force yourself to do the things that you may not want to do in the moment,
eating the frogs,
it's how you get a great quality of life, and how you sacrifice and discipline is you get what you hope to get through hard work. But when your body has a new function, and that function takes priority, and that function is telling you, hey, you can't drink coffee this much, so it starts to make you not want it.
Oh yeah, that was another. So I've been lucky. I've really had no major food aversions. I know that's another thing a lot of people report, I guess, or like take note of. But really the only aversions I had were in first trimester. I just didn't want to drink coffee. I had cut down on my coffee intake, I would say, fairly significantly before we got pregnant anyways. But I mean, as part of my morning routine, I make my French press, I put it in my Yeti, I slowly kind of like drink it throughout the morning, and I've always got it to sip on in the truck when I'm at work. I would make that same amount of coffee, make my French press, and at the end of 12 hours, I would dump like half of it out in the parking lot because I just physically didn't want to. And that just emotionally made me sad because coffee brings me joy and comfort. And I was like, why don't we want it? But that was just the baby being like, no bitch, it's too much, I don't want it right now.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people, that's probably one of those things when it comes to parenting and being pregnant. A lot of people will be like, caffeine, she's having caffeine. And people, I've been trying to tell her, and she just beats me whenever I bring it up. So I don't mention it anymore.
The coffee?
Well, no, that's one of those things where I think people are like, oh yeah, you shouldn't drink caffeine when you're pregnant.
Oh, well, I mean, that's a whole other topic I guess we can spin into. But the physical changes aside, yeah, the physical changes come with like a lot of mental work, I suppose, of how to accept those changes. Mental work within yourself and like negotiating with yourself of what is what do I want to do because I want to do it? What's too much? What's not enough? Where like, I'm kind of in this, from what I hear from people, this perfect time of second trimester where like now is the time you can kind of like be working out and you're still sort of like comfortable enough to do it and you have a little bit more energy than you did first trimester. So sometimes there is I'm tired, but I think it would be good to go for a walk tonight, or I think it would be nice to do like a gentle yoga class. But there's also the mental negotiation of course, everybody has an opinion. And for the most part, it's like very well intentioned, right? Like people are just excited for you. They're excited to share their experiences with you. They want to help you, right?
Help you with how they think.
How they were helped, or how they think you need help.
Is helping, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I'm helping him. It's like, no, you're actually making it worse.
But no, mostly well intentioned. But yeah, there's a lot of opinions about just, and some of it is just even like old wives' tales, right? Of like something their mother or their grandmother told them that then they did, that they're passing down to you. And one of my favorites so far has been about the physical activity, because I am somebody that's so physically active, and I take a lot of pride in that. It like majorly helps me with my mental health. I feel like I need it to do my job. I am still fortunate enough to be working on the road right now. I guess some people wouldn't think that's fortunate, but I still feel fortunate to be on the road, doing something that I enjoy with a great partner and like supportive coworkers. So it's something like staying physically active is something I feel like I need to do for so many reasons. And again, so well intentioned, but it makes me laugh when, like, for example, when I went to go get my winter tires put on, I store them at my sister's house. My dad helps me every year. So it's just like, I need to, go load the tires from the garage and put them into the back of my truck. And my dad will be like, oh, no, don't lift that. Like, you can't lift anything. I gotta do it for you. And I'm just like, Dad, I'm still lifting, like, I'm still deadlifting 205 and like lifting sick people at work and getting down on the ground and like doing CPR and stuff like that. So it's fine. But there's this kind of like, I guess, old school mentality of like, well, you can't lift things when you're pregnant. Are you crazy? And so I actually had a discussion with my OB early on about this, because I was like, listen, I want to do these things. Maybe I'm stubborn for wanting to do with them. Like, give it to me straight. Like, should I not be lifting? Should I be modifying things? Like, tell me what your medical opinion is. And he was like, I really enjoy my OB. He's very candid. He's funny. And he does just kind of give it to me straight and treat me like a healthcare practitioner. But he was like, I mean, you seem smart. Like, you just keep doing what you're doing until it feels like it's not the right, way to go anymore. He literally said, he's like, it's not like you're a librarian that's starting CrossFit. He's like, you're a paramedic that's always been very active, who is continuing to be active. And the reality is, they do absolutely zero studies on pregnant women for anything. So there's never been a study of like, how much weightlifting is appropriate and like how much physical load should you do, and based on your history and pregnancy complications and all of that. Like, there's no research like that actually exists. So you just kind of have to be in tune and listen to your body and do what feels right.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there's some stuff when it comes to like guidelines, when it comes to like heart rate and that kind of stuff. But again, it's all towards like the safer end, without really taking a look back and updating the information. Because yeah, like you said, nobody wants to do studies on pregnant women because the liability is just way too high.
So yeah, so there's just been a lot of mental coping, mental resilience, mental changes. But I think, to your point you made earlier, it's good because all this stuff is preparation for parenthood, of yeah, you don't have an hour to work out all at one time with a newborn. And, you know, then you get into considerations of like, well, what if you have a C-section, right? What if you have an uncomplicated C-section? At minimum, you're looking at 6 weeks recovery for muscle and tissue recovery. Never mind from there, the rehab of those abdominal muscles and getting that strength back, which, I mean, your core strength really dictates everything for how you even walk through life, right? Just your balance and all of that. So
yeah, it's like, you know, if you had, let's say you were a camper, an avid camper.
I'm not an avid camper, but yeah.
And I was gonna say homeless person living in a tent, but I was like, let's say you're a camper.
That's nicer.
A person experiencing homelessness in a dwelling. You're a camper and you have this tent, and it's like a nice tent, and you go out and you go in like to the Yukon, and it's a insulated tent, and someone just comes by with an X-Acto knife and slices it right down like a vertical line, and then you're like, oh, that's okay, I'm still gonna use this tent to go camping and it should be okay, I'm good to get right back to it. That's basically what happens with a C-section. You get
impossible.
You get a horizontal line sliced through your ab muscles and all the fat tissue and skin. And if you think that just letting 6 weeks go by without actually re-establishing like the strength there and doing all the exercises and physio, if you think you're just gonna let time go by and you'll be okay, like, no, like you have to patch up that tent. You may have to get like a new tent.
Well, and again, that's an uncomplicated C-section, right? Like, what if you have an infection?
Yeah.
With anything, and again, we're talking about C-sections, but just in the spirit of changing bodies in general, this is also applicable to any kind of surgery, right? If you have to have orthopedic surgery, if you have a hip replacement or shoulder surgery, like really any surgery, you're banking on a good outcome, just that it was done properly in terms of everything was stitched up the best way that it could be. There were no complications during the surgery. You don't have adverse effects to the anesthetic. You know, there's no infection. Like any surgery, you have possibility of infection, right? I had a coworker of mine. This was years ago when them and their partner had their first child, but the mother had complications after a C-section because they like accidentally left one of the gauzes in her, which is obviously a huge fuck up, and was having like, you know, nausea and fevers and abdominal pain. And obviously the body was like trying to reject this gauze that got like, maybe it wasn't for a C-section, maybe it was just from the delivery itself and like padding bleeding or something after. But somehow this gauze got like left in her and she became like borderline septic from it, right? Jeez. So things like this happen. I mean, the medical system isn't perfect. By any means. Some
would say it's not even good.
Some would.
Some would say it's pretty poor, depending on where you are.
Right.
Okay, so if this was a page in a manual, and we get back to dealing with changes in something that you used to be able to control, which is your body, and how can that apply to a lot of people, especially, you know, the ultimate is the pregnancy, where it's like, I used to be able to run my body and now I'm just a passenger here, and I'm not even a first class passenger, I'm like
economy with Ryanair.
Economy minus. With Ryanair. So how can we make it apply to a wider scale of what can you talk about and say about how you've been not just coping with it, but what have you been doing to overcome those things, and what are the practices and behaviors to deal with a changing body, something you used to be in control and now you're just a passenger.
Right. Well, for me personally, it's been a lot of mental work. Like
Tell me about the mental work.
I already have a pretty solid like meditation and floating practice that we discussed on here before. So I think a lot of the time it's partly that, it's partly working on the mental work of reminding myself that I'm more than my body, which I think is, again, you can apply that to post-injury, aging, like postpartum, like any of those things. Like are you, or even another example I was thinking of is, I've never partaken in this, but think about how many people have done fitness competitions, right? Mm-hmm. Whether they're bikini competitions or weightlifting competitions, whatever the case is. And you put your body through this grueling, exercise regime and dieting and like not drinking water for periods of time and then rehydrating and all of that to get a certain aesthetic. Like I know there's so many reports of people going through that process, and then after the competition's over, you've been in the bikini, you're all tanned and greased up, and you've got these like professional images of you looking like rail thin and super strong. And then after that, you go to like rehydrate and carb load and like eat a big meal after. And so many people have like wild feelings of body dysmorphia and like can't cope with returning to like a regular life after that, right? Like, how do you deal with that? But I think the case in all of those situations is like, are you more than your body? Like the answer is of course yes, but so many people find their identity in their body. Mm-hmm. So like this idea of, are you more than your body, or like what else do you bring to the table in life outside of your body? Like your body is a vessel to carry you through life and do all these things that you enjoy and reach certain milestones and accomplishments. But instead of just focusing on the physical, like for me, instead of just focusing on like, I am a yogi and I can do these certain inversions and I can do like 90-minute like intense vinyasa practices no problem, or I am a female paramedic who can lift 225 no problem, and I can squat and I can do this and I can do that. It's like, well, what else am I outside of like the physical strength and the flexibility? So just meditating and doing some floating and some mental work on finding identity outside of your body, mm-hmm. I suppose is one thing that I've been working on.
Or even zooming out more, because what you're like really specific with what you're saying there, right? But mm-hmm. all those things have something in common, which it's like, okay, well, how did you get that? Well, I got that by being disciplined and doing hard work. It's like, so I'm disciplined, I'm a hard worker. What is something that you can always control no matter what? It's like,
well, true.
I can control the amount of work and focus I put into things.
And I guess I never really thought about it that way, about like discipline and hard work. But yeah, I am somebody who prides myself on being disciplined and a mm-hmm. hard worker. But does that always have to translate to physical feats? Like, can you be,
of course not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I am also a hard worker, even if I can't deadlift as much now. Like, I am still disciplined by doing different types of movements most mm-hmm. days of the week. So that's a good point. And then also, I think another big lesson for me has just been like surrendering, mm-hmm. Like, and not feeling like, getting rid of feelings of guilt around that. Like you can speak to this, but I'm sure you've observed this many times, of just, I'll decide, even outside of pregnancy, right? Like I'm exhausted after a day of coming home. I'm like, no, my body needs rest today. I'm going to rest. But then I'll stew about it on the couch for like an hour where I'm not actually present or enjoying the rest. I'm just wrestling with how, well, you know what, I should be going and doing something, and maybe mm-hmm. I'll just go for a walk instead. But no, I really don't feel like that. I should rest. But you have to, and then it's just this like internal struggle I have with myself of like feeling like I should be doing something while I'm saying I'm gonna rest, and then that actually leads to no rest at all. So it's been also a practice of surrendering what is the greater purpose here? And the greater purpose right now is creating a healthy other human being.
Yeah. When you're, like we talked about earlier, when you're not pregnant, more often than not, battling through those mental terrorists. When you are pregnant and you have a different reason of existence, at least for your body, then you have to get more in tune with what you're actually feeling. Like, okay, this is just my mind right now. I can push through it a little bit. Or, no, this is my body, and I'm going to listen to that. So being able to get more in tune with where the mind, I guess, or where the body begins and the mind ends, or vice versa. And
a lot of that is just practice, right? That's knowing yourself. That's being in touch with both your physical body and your mind, like knowing the signals that your body is trying to convey to you, like how to communicate, how to have your mind communicate with your body of like, okay, am I actually just being lazy? Like, could I push through this? Or is this like a genuine fatigue where your muscles are tired and it's a tiny baby being like, no, that's enough for today, mom?
Well, exactly, like relating back to that coffee, where it's like, oh, okay, this is my body saying I don't want it. Whoa, down the hatch, baby, here it comes. like you're not,
triple espresso. You got it.
So to be able to like, okay, I'm not gonna override this. I can feel my body saying that. The same thing, when it comes to like, oh, I just need a stretch day. It's like, well, how do you know that? It's like, well, it comes from doing so many workout days and so many stretch days that just like driving a car, like you get to understand the car more and more and more. That
was a case for me today. I mean, I've been sleeping more on my days off. I have a nice wake up time of 10 a.m. right now, which has been great, which is also very counterintuitive to me. Normally, after I work a few day shifts in a row, like I just finished working 3 in a row, my body will naturally wake up at that or in and around that same time that I would wake up for day shifts, which was annoying in a different capacity because I'm like, no, body, it's time to sleep in. We've earned it. But these days, I think just being, again, carrying around a little extra weight, a little extra blood volume, like needing more energy to be shifted to different things. I'm just naturally kind of like not getting up till bed or out of bed until 10 on my days off, or when I'm flipping over to nights, which is kind of nice. And I woke up and I kind of, last night when I got home, I pushed through to do a workout, which was a little, I mean, I had a really great day at work yesterday, so it was a little bit more of like conquering an inner bitch because it just was like sleet snowing sideways, and I was like, no, I can probably do this, I just don't want to because it's dark and miserable out. And then so we went for a climb and did a little bit of weights after, and that was good. But today I woke up and I was just like, I am hormonal, I am emotional, my body's tired, I'm getting some nice cankles going, I feel like swollen in my body, and so I need to do a series of static back, so right, foam rolling, and just to like stretch things out and feel better.
And it's January 13th, and
the sun hates us.
There's been a couple hours of sunlight in the last 3 weeks.
Yeah,
like total.
Brutal.
So even if you don't have a little human inside of you, a lot of people are feeling having those same thoughts.
We were like half joking, but honestly it's not really a joke. Like I feel like this year probably most people, so January 1st was on a Monday, I believe it was this year. So in terms of kids going back to school, they still had that whole week off. So really life didn't resume to a normal schedule for most people until January 8th. So with that, a lot of people probably, if I was going to guess, also started their quote unquote routines, whether that's like physical or diet wise or whatever their intentions were going to start for the year on January 8th.
That's what the plan was.
And then January 9th was our first, like, it was super windy, like super snowy, kind of like slush rained all day, just a fucking miserable day. And so we were joking, we're like, January 8th, people were so optimistic of like, yeah, going to the gym, gonna get it done. And then January 9th, we're probably like, pizza sounds good today. Because the weather is just not making it an easy battle for people to set new intentions and start new routines.
That's something I was thinking about, I think, today. But the thing I was thinking about was it last week or a couple weeks ago we talked about the neurological levels, the logical levels of behavior.
A couple of pages ago, yeah.
And that comes down to, okay, the base level is environment. So if we let, like what you just said, a lot of people let their environment dictate what behaviors they're going to be able to do. Right. It's like, oh, I can't do this job because I don't have the tools. And then you just, that's the end of that's right. You know, game, set, match. So, oh, it's cold out, it's shitty out, there's no sun. So I can't do the behaviors.
Interesting.
As opposed to the other way around. It's like, no, I do the behaviors and that changes my internal environment. You know, like environment. If the environment is running the show, then you better move to somewhere with a lot of sun and good weather.
Except then you're prone to hurricanes.
You know, because if you're in Canada or up north, there's going to be 4 or 5 months a year where it's going to be interrupting your circadian rhythm and your hormones and your dopamine and all that stuff, unless you're doing those behaviors no matter the environment.
Imagine living in like the Yukon or the Northwest Territories. Like, just, I'm sure you've seen it as well, like crazy images of it's like, you know, 1 p.m. and it's just complete darkness, like it's midnight, or on the flip side it's 3 a.m. and it's just like the middle of the day. Like, that's a concept that's so insane to me. I don't know how, I don't know, I will never live in the Yukon or the Northwest Territories, so I guess I just don't really have to deal with it. But just, I would love to talk to somebody who has done that for a prolonged period of time and just figure out how they organize their routines and sleep and motivation and all of that.
Yeah, that's where it comes in handy to have the newest information and knowledge of like, okay, what are some hacks here? Can I buy a fake sunlight? Can I learn how to set my circadian rhythm as well as possible even though there's no sunlight? Yeah, there's a whole bunch of hacks. There's a lot of stuff to do with your light exposure and temperature and, you know, cold water and sauna and all that stuff. But there's only so much you can do when you spend a whole month in darkness.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, funny enough, I just thought of this. We are actually planning a future episode with a guest who has lived up north like that for a period of time. So not the topic of what we were planning to interview him about or discuss, but maybe we can throw that in as a little sidebar when we do that. Anyways, so pregnancy and all that aside, like, I've been very fortunate that I've never had any serious injuries that's impacted my ability to do physical activity. Like, I've never broken a bone. I've never dislocated a shoulder. Like, I've never needed surgery for any of those things. Since I've known you, you haven't had any major injuries either. Like, when you were younger, I think you said you broke your collarbone, or I'm sure you've had some hockey injuries. But have you ever dealt with a physical injury that's like impacted because you're obviously a very physical person as well. Like, have you had any injuries that have impacted your ability to do sport or work out or anything like that?
Not just like broken wrist, broken collarbone when I was 16, and like, I think they might have both happened when I was 16.
The wrist and the collarbone?
Yeah, separate incidents. one sober, one drunk.
Right.
But both stupid.
Right.
They had both of those things in common.
Well, the wrist was hockey, right?
The wrist was the wrist.
Other way around.
Nothing was ever hockey.
Oh, okay.
I broke my collarbone snowboarding.
Oh, okay.
During playoffs for hockey, so that was good for the team. And then
their goalie.
Yeah. And the wrist was 16 in Cuba, drunk, and I woke up in the morning and my wrist hurt, and I was like, I don't know what the hell happened.
So you don't even remember, like, if you fell?
I remember falling or trying to like climb up something and falling and being like, I'm okay.
Right.
But obviously the next morning all fucked up.
Right.
So no, as far as the body forsaking me, no, not really. The most recent incidents of just a month ago or 6 weeks ago and getting a cough and then having a cough for a couple of weeks and then that progressing into like losing my sense of taste and smell and then so much phlegm and then probably COVID along with like some kind of terrible cough.
Right.
Where that prevented me from doing any workouts for a few days, and I tried to power through it, and that probably made it worse. And that, as far as like sickness, it's really just been the last couple COVIDs that I've gotten where it
Set you back a little
shuts
bit.
me down for a week.
Right. But nothing long term, like a month or months or anything like that.
No, been pretty
fortunate.
healthy. So that's why I haven't really had to experience with my body's not mine anymore. There's been with appearance and stuff and looks, for sure I've noticed stuff that I can't control in myself, but when it comes to like the whole body and like having to relinquish ownership or give into a different meaning, I haven't really had to do that.
Right.
And hopefully that I don't have to anytime soon, other than the slow aging process, which I think if I can fill up my tanks, if I can fill up my needs to make myself feel significant in other ways besides just how I look, and instead focus more on like what I feel, how I feel about myself and what I can contribute, then again it's a well diversified stock portfolio. Do you put all your money into what your appearance does for you? That's not a good investment.
That's 100% in gold.
After like the age of 40, like, is that a good investment? You know, I don't think so.
No.
Because after 40, the treadmill starts going faster, and you have to run faster in order to even stay on the treadmill.
Just to break even.
Just to stay on the treadmill, you're going to have to run faster and faster and faster. So you would want to diversify and be like, okay, I am going to give in to some things about my body, and I'm going to just be doing my best every single day in my workouts, like day one type of thing, and get your significance and fulfillment from a few other things as well.
For sure. Well, and that relates back to, again, why do you, whether you're setting a New Year's intention this year or whether you've been working it for years, like, what is the purpose of doing that? Like, part of it is for aesthetic. There's no doubt. Anyone who says they're not working out to like feel good in a pair of jeans or want to be attractive to their partner or maintain a certain weight, like that's, I think, inevitable. There has to be some part of that, and it feels good to indulge in that a little bit. But I think over time, the more you get into it, it's like, yeah, I've seen somebody my own age die. Or I have seen my parent or my grandparent or whatever suffer from this health condition. And there's no doubt that part of that was like lifestyle related. So I need to get my shit together here. Or I have a child now, and I want to be able to get down on the floor with them, like pain free, without my knees cracking or having back pain or whatever the case is. Like, there has to be some higher purpose outside of just the aesthetic look. And I think it's, like I was saying earlier, it's okay and it's perfectly fine to start for aesthetic reasons, but it can't just stay there. And I think naturally for most people, as you stick with a routine for a long period of time, that sort of evolves naturally, hopefully, the greater purpose.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't, well, as far as naturally, I think it takes some awareness, and like, you hope naturally you become more aware of all of the good things it does for you. And really, working out and taking care of your body, you do it for the mental reasons. You do it to feel happy.
Yeah.
You're as far as level of happiness and quality of life, if your compartment for your brain and your soul, if that's a hunk of junk, then you're not going to get as much enjoyment out of life. You're not going to be able to travel to as many places and do as many things, and to feel the highs as much as you would.
Yeah.
You know?
I can't remember if certainly you and I have talked about it off air before. Maybe we've mentioned this in another episode, but I always used to find it funny how people have a certain perception of you just as somebody who works in health and fitness and as a personal trainer for a living, of just like, you're gonna eat Burger King, like, but you're a personal trainer, or like, you know, just comments like that. And it's like, well, he's still a human being that can enjoy a Whopper. Okay, Wendy's. Spicy chicken, plain.
I'll take 3 number 6 plains, big size.
Yeah.
Not
large frosty. But I mean, you know, you have said this for years, and it's certainly something that I subscribe to as well. But the reason that you know, fuel your body with food, like healthy food that actually fuels you the way you need to do, and the reason you work out every day, you know, for 3 weeks straight, is so that one weekend when, you know, you are going to go to the cottage and we're just going to eat meat and cheese all weekend, and you're going to have a bunch of drinks and you're going to stay up late, you do fully enjoy that to the most, because you feel good about yourself. Like, physically you feel good, where you've sort of like built up the runway where you can tolerate that change in routine, but also you just mentally feel good because you've done all these things to mentally make you feel good, that makes you more present and able to connect with other people.
Yeah, there's like the future instances, but and then it's also how it makes you how it allows you to show up every day. And that comes back to more and more of the neuroscience and like the brain chemistry of what happens when you force yourself to do hard workouts. That's what I mean when I say your actual mental health, which is serotonin and dopamine and oxytocin and those like big 3 there. That's what allows you to feel good about yourself day to day and to build that momentum. And then when you're feeling good about yourself and you are going to events that you look forward to, you get to enjoy them that much more. So you're not just doing it for a wedding day. It's like, that's one day and then it's gone. It's like, well, no, you get to enjoy your wedding day and the day before and the day after and the day after and the day after.
In your life. Your lifetime.
So it is good to have a lot of a diversified motivation portfolio. I want to do it because I want this hunky guy to notice me. I want to do it so that I set a good example for my kids. I want to do it so that my husband and I are still attracted to each other. I want to do it because my knee is hurting and I want to fix it so that I can travel to this place and hike this mountain. Like, they're endless. It's endless amount of motivations. So diversify it, get a few, and yeah, looking good and wanting the opposite sex, whatever sex you're attracted to be attracted to you, that's built into your DNA. So you can say you're above it and not acknowledge it, but
Biology's got different plans for you.
It's still happening, but it's good to get beyond that, but not to just ignore it and pretend like, oh, if I do that, then that makes me a vain piece of shit.
Yeah.
It's like, no, like, if you watch elk or deer in the rut, and it's like, yeah, they get 1 month. They get 1 month and they go like absolutely haywire. Like, they don't care about hunters. They're smashing into cars, anything that comes near them, and they're females. Like, they're just absolutely out to lunch. So it is important to remember that humans are animals, and as far as reproducing and multiplying, that's basically the thing we're here to do. Mm-hmm. In our DNA.
Yeah, vanity. It's okay to be a little bit vain about your physical
and I wouldn't
appearance. It's just, it can't be the only thing.
Yeah, I wouldn't even say like vain. I wouldn't even use that word, right?
To care about your, I don't know, replace it with whatever you want.
To have some part of your self-confidence and self-esteem involved with your appearance. Mm-hmm. You know, that's all. You just give it a different name and title.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Cool. Anything else you want to touch on?
No, I don't think so. I would like to clarify what this, what the episode is really for.
Changing bodies.
What the page is really for, and I think looking back on it now, whatever, an hour in, what would you say?
I would say it's about life is going to change your body. It is, whether that's pregnancy related, whether that's recovering from an injury, whether that's just father time, like your body is going to change. So knowing that and not fully digging in your heels and resisting that. Like, some of it will require some resistance. Again, you can't turn 40 and be like, well, back pain's normal at 40, so I'm just gonna fall into this, right? Like, a little bit of healthy resistance is good to combat some of these things. But knowing that your body's gonna change, and just taking stock of how you can deal with that gracefully. Surrender to it a little bit, be aware of what emotions and human needs are tied up in your physical appearance, and just encouragement for everybody to know that your body is a vessel and you are more than your physical body.
Yeah, we'll end with this, which is a nice analogy that I heard from somebody else, which is life, you're kind of in that car, and you get to decide how fast you go and what kind of drive it's going to be. If it's going to be a 0 to 100 right off of a cliff within like 25 years, or you drive below the speed limit and you never take any back roads and you're just always on the 401 and you should take the safest route possible. The goal is to kind of get a mixture of those, where you get to do the back roads, some scenic routes, some speeding, but also get a long drive out of the car. Because on each one of those ends of the spectrum is the goal just to have as long of a life as possible. Is the goal to have as much fun in a short amount of time as possible? Or,
yes.
Or is it the mixture? To try to get as much life in your years, and life and years in your life? So I think a mixture of those two, and to realize that if you're going to do that, then your body is going to be out of your control eventually, but you can bucket water out of the ship as much as you can in order to keep the ship floating and be able to travel the seas with it.
Multiple modes of travel analogies in there at the end.
Yeah,
you didn't have an airplane one.
3.
All right. Happy 2024.
Bye, guys.